familiar with it, they put it into place in 2019, a redistricting committee specifically for Freedom Elementary. And that was in process when COVID came, and it's something that's been difficult to continue with them in light of that. So it's my understanding that that is on pause until, I believe they said until the actual 2020 figures are available for enrollment. And what they do once they have those figures, I can't say. So that's the school board. School board's looking at the redistricting, which I anticipate would be a resolution to the concerns for overcrowding that exists currently again. That's something the school board's doing. That's not something the development review is doing. It's not something the planning commission is doing or the developer is doing. So we're kind of at the whim as to what the school board's doing. We're hoping that that picks back up again here soon, if not for this project and other projects, but more so for the kids who are in these overcrowded schools. But again, that's the school board. However, with that being said, we have Chapter 156 in place to consider adequate facilities being provided. Again, to make sure that development, residential development does not outpace the public facilities that are available. It's a concern, it's a consideration throughout the review process. However, it's tested in detail at the preliminary stage of subdivision. In this situation here today, we are in the concept stage of subdivision. So again, the adequate public facilities are tested in detail at preliminary. And today we're at concept. So we can recognize that there is an issue, and in the future, we'll look at that in detail and identify exactly where we are and what impact this project and other projects in the area will have. It's a very comprehensive review of what's going on in the area to impact those facilities. And when it gets to the preliminary phase, that's when that will happen. When it gets to that phase, if there are still inadequacies that have not yet been addressed, that's to say, God forbid, the redistricting committee is still on hold because COVID is still an issue 5 years from now, who knows? And if those issues have not been addressed or there is not a way to address them, essentially the plan would not be able to be approved to the point where their houses are being built until those issues are resolved or have a plan for resolution. So again, this is not something, this plan can't move ahead and you can't have these houses be built until everything's been approved. The next step is preliminary. At preliminary, we will look in detail at the public facilities in the area, determine adequacies versus inadequacies, and look for ways that that is either currently being addressed or going to be addressed in the future before anything gets approved to the point of being built. So I just wanted to recognize that. I know we don't have anybody here in the meeting room. I'm not sure if we're going to have any citizens coming to speak, but that was a continuing trend through all the communications we've received through emails and through people I've talked to personally as well. So that is something that we'll look at in detail in the future moving forward. So in this situation here today, again, backing out of the future and the theories there, we're looking at a concept plan. We're looking at a concept plan for considerations and any questions or comments that the commission or the public might have for the developer and engineer. And in particular, in this situation, it's a cluster subdivision. We're seeking, or rather the developer is seeking approval to proceed as a cluster subdivision. So at that time, I feel like I've talked enough here right now. I would like to answer any questions if anybody had questions, or offer the opportunity for the planning commission to ask questions of the engineer and developer.
So thank you, Kirsten. That was great. Appreciate, again, very good, in particular since you stepped in for somebody else.
Yeah.
Typically what we'll do is I was going to ask the developer if they have anything to add, and then we'll ask some questions, and then we'll give the public an opportunity to comment. But I really think it was nice how you addressed a number of the concerns that have been raised by the public in the emails that we've all gotten and read and seen, and the information from the public also attached to our packet this morning. So with that, Mr. Hackett or Mr. Powers, do you have anything to add to the presentation?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We're quite aware that we have to abide by the public facilities ordinance, that as the process goes through preliminary and then into final plat. The clustering is really what we're asking for today. Clustering out obviously is basically done on every project nowadays because of the regulations and the sensitive areas on how to preserve them. You can certainly develop a project conventionally based on the Euclidean zone. But what ends up happening is your lots are larger, but they're confined by individual easements that, that encumber those lots. And what that does is then those people believe they own the land still. And then next thing you know, you have sheds in the forestry and so on. So we believe that keeping the cluster and putting your open space in the HOA and your stream buffer areas all on property that's owned by the community at large, gives you a better product in the end. It definitely creates those open space areas. It does preserve a lot of your limit of clearing and everything else. So overall, the conventional zone has no open space regulations. So virtually you'd have these lots sprawled out with no open space. Granted, you'll still have some woods there and all, and you'll still have stream buffers, but they'll be on private property. So anyway, that's what our request is, and we're hoping that the planning commission sees it favorably.
No comment. No comment. Okay.
Before we proceed too much, I feel bad. Laura went out and took pictures of the site and I skipped right over them. So I think a lot of us are familiar with the area, just for the sake of us having full understanding before the planning commission considers the project. You can take a look at this here. So these are, I think, for the most part, all on Oklahoma Road. Some of them are facing north, some of them are facing south. In particular note, I just wanted to say that the properties across the street from Oklahoma Road for a good stretch of Oklahoma Road have a lane on the side that could be used for parking. That's not something that is proposed again for this site because we have acceleration and deceleration lanes instead, and the properties are built back off of new roads inside of the subdivision, so they're not accessed from Oklahoma Road. But that's something that's not going to change on the other side of the street as far as I can see. Again, on this plan here, it's something that is sidewalk and curb on the northern side or the western side, excuse me, on the property side, and then acceleration and turn lanes throughout for the other intersections there too. So these are just showing some of those areas. So I apologize for skipping over those earlier, and please continue any questions you might have.
Very good. All right. Questions?
I have one. So I know Monroe, coming from Liberty Road, is pretty well traveled. A lot of people use it as a shortcut. And of course, Oklahoma gets a lot of speed coming up the road. Don't shoot me, but is there any consideration to a circle there at Oklahoma and Monroe? It would help maybe slow things down a little bit and alleviate some stuff, possibly.
We have not. The traffic engineer, as doing the study, looked at the intersections themselves. They meet site distance requirements. Normally, those kind of facilities would be used if you cannot meet those site distance, stopping site distance, headlight site distance, and so on. And therefore they would slow the speeds down to make the traffic, handle the volume through that whole segment. In this case, we do meet those criteria. So, that they weren't recommending that.
Anything else?
Yeah, when we look at the home, coming right off of what you're saying, that it would seem to me that if we are redirecting traffic on Monroe, and frankly, I think it's a good idea. I know there are people in the community that don't think it's a good idea, but the intersection of Oklahoma and Bennett is challenging to improve in the future. And so it would make sense to me that some people would come down Oklahoma and turn left on Monroe when it's connected by that bridge that the county's going to do, and get over to Bennett using this road. Was there any consideration, because if we're using that as a secondary collector, Monroe is a secondary collector, would it not make sense to take some of those homes that are on Monroe and avoid having so many driveways come off and put them on Road A, which you're now using there's a common area with the fire pit in there. I would have thought that we might be able to get 3 or 4 more homes on Road A and get those driveways off of, particularly there near the entrance where you're talking about the traffic calming. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there to get some of those driveways, people backing in and out, and again, people do what they do on Monroe anyway. And they do motor down that road. They go pretty quick down that hill. So I was just curious about that. And that's just a comment. It's not trying to micromanage, Powers. I know people who've bought your homes. They have nothing but good things to say about you and the homes you build. This is not an indictment on that. It's just an observation there. Concerning the number of driveways we have coming out on what it will be a secondary collector. I guess the second thing I would ask is on sites this large, where we're putting curb and gutter and stormwater management throughout the site, is there not an opportunity to consolidate stormwater management instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 ponds? Is there not a way to do regional detention on this site that would even give more open area? Is there a way to do that?
The answer, the quantity, there's two different things going on.
Yes.
The stormwater is handled by quantity management and then water quality.
Okay.
The couple large facilities that you see are handling the quantity.
Okay.
All those small bioretention areas you see and all the little squares that are dry wells that are on individual lots, that's part of the water quality.
Okay.
The ESDs, which the environmental site design, those forest, the actual your rain gardens, if you will, bioretention areas, they're only allowed to have so much drainage going to them. And
Okay.
believe it or not, it's 20,000 square feet. It's a half acre.
Really? Okay.
Each one. It's about, and it doesn't have to be 20,000 square feet of impervious area.
Okay.
It's just 20,000 square feet of area
Okay.
that you have to place these. So if you have you have 19,000 square feet of grass and 1,000 square feet of impervious area, you still have to have a facility. The same as if it was 20,000 square feet of parking area.
Mhm.
We try to do regional type facilities whenever possible.
There you go.
That's the thing you strive for.
Right.
Unfortunately, with today's interpretation of the regulations and the change in regulations that have occurred over the past probably 10 to 15 years, you don't see those as much. But that would be your priority.
Right. I would think it'd be a great way to help the developer maximize the site as well, and also for the community. I mean, because you end up with all these detention ponds. The last thing I'll say is, and this is coming from the community as well, what I hear is when we allow for clustering and we have these open spaces, and I don't mean to monopolize the time here, I apologize. It would be nice while the developer has control of the development, where the developer, rather than just placing a fire pit and some benches around, if you could create a blacktop with a tennis court or a basketball hoop or something, improve it before you hand it over to the HOA, because they'll never agree on it. While you've got control of the site, you can decide what amenity, if any, you're going to put in. The community would like to see more than just a field plopped out there, which we've seen in the past, where there's a field that has nothing but, you have to maintain it, you have to mow it. But aside from taking a golf club out there and hitting golf balls, there's really there are no soccer nets. There's no, there's really nothing out there for the community to use other than open space. And so I would encourage you to consider what the market would want in that amenity space that could be used during daylight hours, aside from just a fire pit. I would encourage you to think through that and bring that forward.
I can appreciate the thought process. What we found is we did have amenities in the past similar to what you described, but there are two issues that have creeped into: liability issues The homeowners association takes on much more liability for those type of active facilities. The second issue is it brings people from outside the community in, and the residents within the community don't necessarily appreciate that because the amenity should be for their use, not necessarily for surrounding communities. So those are the two things that kind of drive, I think, the way we've been addressing the issue you're describing. And I think they're very real. And I just think the commission should consider those type of things. That's why we've been kind of proposing more passive open space, but no liability issues, and the ability not to trap people from using the facilities that aren't really entitled to use the facilities. So I think those are some driving factors as to why we're proposing the kind of uses we're proposing in the open spaces.
That makes sense. And along with the liability, the homeowners do tend to rise with insurances and, reserve to take care of that. So I think it's personal. I think it's best left with the.
Yeah, and I hear what both of you are saying. We, as a commission, we've heard continuously through this process, through the zoning regulation, the residential zoning regulation process, we heard over and over again, why are we doing this? Because these open spaces, there's really no real benefit to the community. If we're going to allow for clustered homes, which is what we're asking for, there needs to be some sort of benefit to the community. County's not building any parks anytime soon in that area. We've got 30,000 people living in 19,000 acres now. So having places where people don't have to get in their car, they can literally, put their kid in a stroller, walk up the street and, contain. I think it's a good thing. I get what you're saying. And, the great points. And I have no comeback other than what we're hearing from the community is quite the opposite from what you two are saying. Because, we haven't heard anybody from a homeowners association say, we don't want that. We've heard a homeowner say, we would have liked to have seen it. That's what we've heard from the community.
What we, I'm sorry, sir.
Yes, sir.
When we looked at this project, we tried to stick to more of a community area as far as a nice area. It is not just a little fire pit that looks like a ring of a wheel or something. It's a substantial structure with the park-like setting. And the main reason why we didn't get into whether it's tot lots or any type of like multi-purpose court, basketball court or anything, is our proximity to the middle school is right next door. There's fields there that are additional, that are probably, they're obviously, that are going to be able to be used for public use. So we looked at that. And again, because the school in this situation is right next door, it makes this site kind of unique because it is our neighbor.
Yeah, that's true.
If we were out sort of further away, not in walkable, we're even proposing to put a sidewalk that'll walk you so that person can walk the stroller right over to the school. So, and I know the sidewalk's not going any further than that at this point in time, but sometime, these sidewalks to nowhere may get extended. And then Mr. Powers is willing to build that. So anyway, that was our thought process. And again, this is at the concept stage. We certainly are going to be in front of this board at least one more time. Yeah.
Mr. Powers, did you want to say something?
In addition, by clustering the job, it allows the open space to be enjoyed by everyone in the community. If we had a standard plan, they wouldn't have access to this open space. Yes, it would still exist. It'd still be protected by easements, but this affords the ability for everyone in the community to benefit from the open space.
Mhm.
Now, whether it's used actively or passively, we can debate that all day long.
Right.
But ultimately, I think it benefits the customer and the consumer that lives there to be able to access it equally like all the other residents and have rights to walk through it, to do what they want with it. And I think that's an important element that should be considered.
Agreed. And again, I'll say it out loud. I'm not opposed to clustering here on this property. I live in what was the flight path to the airport here. And there were times when, somebody was flying into that old airport and you just prayed for a tailwind because, you heard the engine kind of cutting out. And, Lord, give him a win because he's not going to make it. And so I'm glad this thing's getting developed from that standpoint. And frankly, again, I'd like to see you be the developer. So it's not clustering. It's not you. The comments back from the community is these open spaces that are passive. They'd like to see something more done by the developer and not just leaving it as grass. So that's what we've heard, and I'm just reflecting that back to your direction. Thank you. I'm done.
Matt?
What I would say really, I mean, your biggest benefit is the environmental water quality side by clustering. That I think a lot of people forget about
Mhm.
that side of it.
Natural services are important, and that's what these open space areas provide.
Yeah, and we've heard from a lot of the communities too, that they like seeing that natural environment. So,
I had just a couple follow-up. Do we have any idea, this may not be knowable, but do we have any idea of when the connection to Monroe Avenue would take place? So it goes from a dead end in this development and make a connection. Is that any way to predict that, or that could be just whenever?
We don't know. The developer of the Dan Phillips property, which is that segment of road, only built it down to a certain point and did not extend it across the stream to the Hobie Wolf property. I don't know. I didn't do that project. So I don't know why it was only built to a portion of it. There are some monies that were bonded and the design was done to the property line, but they weren't forced to build it there. We're planning on building it entirely all the way to our property line. So I would imagine the CIP what Ms. Eisenberg talked about ultimately will fill in that gap.
As you know, in the county, particularly in this area, we have these segments of roads and then there are missing segments. And this is an opportunity to sort of fill that in. But of course, then some of the comments we've heard from the community are then people cut through, and this is what I think Mr. Lester was getting at. If people start using Monroe Avenue as sort of a cut through, fast forward to it's all completed and you've got it all the way through. Are there things that you can do to slow traffic down there? I mean, is that something?
It's a
that
county road, so
County
we
would
have to
take-
meet certain standards. And I think cut through is a bad term to use. I mean, these aren't cut throughs, these are county roads for connectivity. It's not like we're creating these crazy shortcuts and things like that. And that's why you have this interconnectivity. So traffic isn't funneled to one particular area. It's diffused throughout the system, and that makes it better for everyone. So we're not putting all of this traffic, because then we get the complaints, 26 is congested, 32 is congested. When you have this ability to travel different ways, you diffuse that system and you spread the traffic out across the area more evenly. So I would say this isn't really a cut through, it's just part of that continuous road network of interconnectivity.
And I guess the reason I say cut through is because you really are giving, it is true, you diffuse the traffic, that's good. The bad news is you're diffusing it into a neighborhood. And that's the concern I'm raising, is then there are ways for the county to deal with that chicane.
If it becomes an issue, then, we always evaluate those and come up with whatever the best solution is for that particular area. And that's something that our public works department would look into. And I'm not saying that, we shouldn't be proactively looking at these, we should be waiting for issues, but we don't know if there is going to be issues that arise from this too. So it's hard to tell until something really happens what the outcomes will be. But there are efforts that could happen in the future if there is issues.
No, and I appreciate that. And those were comments that were coming from the public, so I thought the easiest things to raise them right now.
Yep.
And then one other comment we saw from the public is in the top left corner of the screen, there were some members of the public that live in that area, and we're talking about the fact that I think the plan did not call for any berms or landscaping, and it would be sort of, they were concerned about that with their property backing up to this neighborhood. Do you have any comments concerning that concern?
I mean, we could certainly place some landscaping back in those areas. We'd have to look. I mean, normally when you have residential, you're not really screening per se because it's the similar use.
Right.
We weren't planning on any berms just because of the grade, the way the grades are back there. Some of those areas along that property line, Rolling View Drive, that little corner there, virtually what's happening is we're going to be, a lot of that area, we're going to be cutting. So it's going to be basically, it's going to be a hill. So the houses are actually going to be down a little bit in elevation. And so if there's room at top, towards the tops of the hills, to put some evergreens and stuff like that, I'll be happy to spend some of the money.
The last question I have really is about the school and their sidewalk. I'm not quite understanding why we're running, I mean, I'm a fan of sidewalks and I like them connected and not
Yes.
just going nowhere. This seems to go to the school and then the school says, we don't want the sidewalk. Do you have an understanding why, what the problem there is?
Well, if I could, I would like to give you also the opportunity to talk, but if I could, it's not that the school doesn't want the sidewalk. The school wants the sidewalk to continue to its property lines, but there's no current plans in place for them to construct their own sidewalk to meet it. Will that happen in the future? In a long enough time frame? Probably. Is it on the plans right now? No, they're saying there's not any plans for that right now today. And that could change if sidewalk does come to meet the school property, right? That could become something that shows on the plans, but at this time they don't have the plans, but they are in support of the sidewalk meeting the school property.
I know it's a chicken egg thing. It always
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
So just, I didn't know if there was, the school was actively opposed to a sidewalk coming to meet.
Oh,
It sounds like they're just not going to put one in right now until you.
If I could before, I think with Laura's discussion with them, they're a little bit opposed to the sidewalk being here. This feature here, if you can see this rectangle shape, that's a stormwater management pond. The sidewalk basically opens into a stormwater management pond. The access is not very ideal.
You better have it along the street.
Practical is the word that I referred to previously for the sidewalk. I think that's the question here in the discussion. Is this current connection practical? And what is a better alternative and how do we meet that alternative?
Right. You got to talk to the neighbors and maybe they'll agree. That's still to be done.
Yeah, I mean, if they allow it, then the sidewalk would get built right along Oklahoma and right to the property line.
Yeah.
We just wanted to satisfy the comment saying county wanted the sidewalk to the property line, and that's the only way we could get it there. We could certainly direct the sidewalk and sort of angle it a little bit, so it's not pointing at the stormwater management pond, but it would angle it to where if they take off from it, there's nothing that says the sidewalk or a pathway has to be parallel to a roadway.
Right.
Some places meander them anyway themselves. They try to go down some of these, see some of the streetscape that's going on around. But we're flexible with that stuff.
And we don't have right of way, unfortunately, where we could construct a sidewalk on those properties.
Right,
facing-
right.
Yeah, that's one of the issues. They would have to get the right of way, they'd be actually dedicating land, for the right of way and placing the sidewalk where it would normally be placed.
Right.
So it's not just a matter of building the sidewalk. So that's it would grant us an easement.
All right, good. Any other questions or comments before we?
I would say one comment, just, once they connect with the road, street, then you get a lot of traffic across there. Has there been any thought maybe that the lots at front Oklahoma Road there from the road, that they should be pushed back in case at some point the county would like to construct a roundabout there? Because I know that's the best way to slow traffic in an area that's gonna get a lot more traffic eventually. Maybe some room should be left there so they can possibly do that.
And we could look at that. I mean, we can take a shift them to another location, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, you can bring that back to it. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, the only thing we have to look at is the stormwater management. You shift a lot to another location, you're redoing the stormwater management for that area. Yeah, so
It's all connected.
we'd have to look at it though, something we can certainly look at.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
I guess the last, since was simply because we really haven't discussed it. In that we've completed the residential tax and well, we're about to get it. The activity in this area is going to pick up like this. And it's a good thing. Let's get this stuff done. Let's get it done by people who are good at doing it. At the same time, what's happening with the schools down there, we don't have any control over what to do there. But we just need to say it out loud. The community, what's going on at Carroll Town Elementary and Freedom Elementary, which are the two schools, elementary schools closest to this property. I mean, redistricting will only solve so much. And, we've got something coming here, Commissioner Watts, that, we got some problems here. I mean, it's not just traffic, it's not just sidewalks, there's a school thing here. And, because these people are not going to move in here with no kids. There are going to be some people sitting in seats. So I don't know how we address that. This is coming, folks. So we need to, and I've got no solution to it, but I'd be surprised if we don't hear that as the primary thing from the constituents in the area.
We're already, I mean, we hear that,
Yes, sir.
but we're a little bit, our hands are a little bit tied because the ultimate responsibility for that is on them being Carroll County Public Schools.
Yes, sir.
And the Board of Ed. And there's, and I'm not saying anything out of school here, no pun intended. But whenever you say redistricting, it's immediate.
Oh, yeah.
So with respect to that, they're treading lightly over there. And I'm not so sure that continuous work shouldn't have been occurring there so that we do have a positive conclusion. I know Commissioner Rothstein, who represents that area very well, continues to try to poke them
Mhm.
to re-up that effort, because talk about chicken and egg. Something's got to give.
So,
So
the good thing about it is that the schools in that area are terrific schools.
they are.
And that's why people want to be in the area.
Yeah. they are.
So, we've got this attractive thing that we're going to mess up. I mean, it's kind of like Nashville, right? I mean, Nashville's a great place to live. They're messing it up. I mean, the amount of growth down there is just staggering. It's going to be Atlanta, which I loved, but again, they messed it up.
Well, we continue to try to push them to re-up that effort and really start to work on that. And we will continue to do so because we do not want to be behind that 8 ball. We have the responsibility for roads, public safety, and we're actively working on that. But yet the redistricting is not active. So that's sort of the missing piece of the puzzle now that we need them to really step up and engage.
And I would just add, from a process standpoint, just for those that are listening and having this concern, and I know there are a number of them, there is a chicken egg, because if we go forward and this plan gets on the books, then that's something else for the school system and others to look at and evaluate, and maybe redistricting, while it's short-term fix, if it is, longer term, having these on the books means that maybe they can think more long-term in terms of what's out there and resource it accordingly. And also, as Kirsten said, from a concurrency management standpoint, if the schools or any other infrastructure is inadequate, this can't go forward. It might be on the books, but it's not going to be.
Right.
So those, from a process standpoint, those are in place to make sure you don't have, 5,000 kids sitting in a 300 seat school. With that, why don't we open it up? How is this working? People are on the phone to talk to us?
So people had to sign up ahead of time in order to speak and comment. And that's also on the agenda. If you look for each item that's posted on our agenda, we let the public know how to comment on these topics. So Laura, I don't believe we had anyone sign up for public comment for this item.
Okay.
So other than the written comments, that's all we've received.
Okay, very good. Well, we've received them, we've read them, we've raised a lot of the issues that were in those comments. And Kirsten, of course, preemptively addressed some of those in the presentation. So we appreciate that very much. I guess in terms of, while this is preliminary, is it technically an action item in terms of approving the clustering? Is that something we have to take a motion on?
Yes, that's my understanding with the cluster subdivisions. You would have to authorize that. So you're not approving a cluster plan, you're authorizing it. In your exact
And the report did a real nice job of laying out what the standards are and
Yes.
that this meets all of those requirements. And you included that in your report as well. So,
Requesting, developer requests authorization to cluster. So I would imagine that would be commission's authorization to cluster the Hobie Wolf property subdivision.
okay. Is it Mr. Romans, that seem correct to you?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, with that then, if there's an interest, I'd be happy to entertain a motion for approval of the cluster.
I'll make that motion. Allow this also.
Is there a second?
I'll take it.
Yeah, we have 2 seconds, so that's good. Any further discussion? All right, should we do a roll call or just a voice vote?
I'm liking to just do a full vote for this.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Then the
Thank you very
clustering
much.
is approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Very good. We'll move on to item 10 on our agenda, which is preliminary final subdivision plan. This is FX 21-0004 Bachman Overlook Section 2.
All right, good morning again.
Good morning.
David Beecraft, your development review. As already mentioned, the next project on the agenda is the Bachman Overlook Section 2 preliminary and final subdivision plan. This is file number FX 21-0004. With me is the engineer and the developer. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Jeff Ziegler with CLSI.
Richard Hall, I'm the owner of Bachman LLC.
Good morning.
Morning.
Perfect. So what this project is proposing is 2 new lots of subdivision plus the remaining portion. This was before the Planning and Zoning Commission previously as a concept plan earlier this year. It was actually May 18th, 2021. And as this is before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a combined preliminary and final plan, we're looking for 2 actions that are required with this. The first one being the approval of the preliminary and final plan of subdivision pursuant to Chapter 155. And the second is the approval of the preliminary and final plan of subdivision pursuant to Chapter 156, which is concurrency management. So for those who may not recall, this is right on the outskirts of Manchester. So this red line here is the municipal limits of Manchester. Here is Tracy's Mill Road, and then the site right here is outlined in yellow. So the subject property itself is roughly 15.25 acre parcel shown as the remaining portion of Bachman Overlook, which was recorded, the most recent one being recorded May 14th, 2020, within Plat Book 55, page 322. The property is not developed, as you can tell from the aerial here, and it slopes upwards from Tracy's Mill Road towards the southern property. So as you go further back to property, you get more and more uphill. There is roughly a 130-foot vertical change of elevation. The southern property boundary is comprised of a wooded area that currently has a forest conservation easement on it, as you see outlined or shaded with green, excuse me. And there are no streams or FEMA 100-year floodplain designations on site. The property itself lies within the agricultural zoning district, as do all of the adjoining properties that surround it. All of the adjoining properties are undeveloped or are developed with single-family dwellings. These properties are outside of water and sewer service areas, priority funding areas, and designated growth areas. So this is Section 2. Section 1 of Bachman Overlook created lots 1 through 3, and those are the 3 houses right here. And that was done as a minor subdivision that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission back in 2006. So what's being proposed now is the creation of 2 additional lots. That's going to be, again, on the remaining portion. Lots 4 and 5 are both proposed at 2 acres each, and they will reside along Tracy's Mill Road, as you can see here. The remaining portion will then be at roughly 10 3/4 acres after this subdivision. and it will still be entitled to creation of a subdivision lot after this. A roughly half-acre parcel shown as parcel A here will be deeded to the adjoining property owner as a deed of add-on. Both new lots are proposing single-family dwellings with individual access to Tracy's Mill Road, and each will have their own private well and septic systems. So this concept subdivision plan was initially submitted in June of 2020. The plan was subject to citizen involvement at the August 2020 Technical Review Committee meeting. There was one citizen who was an owner of an adjoining property that raised some concern with an existing culvert that was placed on his property and was getting washed out via the rain. At that time, Mr. Hall stated that he would work to remedy that problem after that Technical Review Committee meeting. And since we haven't received any calls or letters since that meeting, on May 18th, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the concept plan of subdivision. The minutes are located within your planning packets. Again, no citizens signed in or spoke during the meeting, and we haven't heard anything written or spoken from citizens regarding this project since then. So this plan is exempt from floodplain code. As currently designed, the landscaping ordinance does not apply to this project. Grading and sediment control has granted approval of the final plan, as well as engineering review and state highway administration. The Carroll County Health Department has granted approval of the plan with, again, private well and septic systems proposed. Forest conservation will be addressed by way of a purchase of bank. The Bureau of Resource Management has granted final stormwater management approval. It will be addressed via microbial facilities that will drain to a proposed culvert, which will run under Tracy's Mill Road. So the microbial facilities, so here's one, and then here is the other right here. And they will drain to this culvert that will run under Tracy's Mill Road and discharge on this property across the street. As the proposed culvert will drain onto private property, we will look for some sort of agreement between the two property owners. We have received a draft of a stormwater discharge and declaration agreement. So we'll look to have that be required with plat recordation. In accordance with the State Development Plan Memorandum from the Department of Planning, the proposed land use is consistent with the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan's land use designation of agriculture. So with that, pursuant to Chapter 155, staff recommends approval of the preliminary and final plan subject to the following conditions. The owner/developer enters into a public works agreement with Carroll County that guarantees completion of any required improvements, that the parcel shown on the plans as parcel A with an acreage of roughly a half acre shall be deeded to the adjoining property owner as a deed of add-on, that a stormwater management easement and maintenance agreement be deeded to the Carroll County Commissioners by a deed. Drainage and utility easement be granted to the Carroll County Commissioners by a deed as well. Stormwater discharge and declaration agreement for that culvert be recorded as well. And then finally, that any changes to the preliminary plan and plat as submitted and approved by the commission herein shall be resubmitted to the commission for further review and approval. And so with that, I'm just going to show just some brief pictures here. Like I said, this was back in May, presented to the county or the Planning Zoning Commission. So these pictures are from that time. Nothing has changed within 7 or so months. So this is along Tracy's Mill Road, looking both ways, and this is looking back at the site. And this is the sign from section 1. This is about halfway up the property. This one here is looking back at the road, where you can really see the change in contour. And then this one here is looking further back where that existing forest area stands. So as this is considered a major subdivision, being as how these are lots number 4 and 5 within the Bachman Overlook subdivision, this is subject to concurrency management, Chapter 156. So pursuant to Chapter 156, once the department has determined that the residential development plan may be presented to the commission, the plan is reviewed for available threshold capacity. And so that entails various agencies, so police services, schools, fire and emergency, or fire and EMS services, and then roads as well. So I'm going to go through each one so you have an understanding as to how this subdivision will impact those. The first we'll do will be police services. So the ratio is calculated by counting all sworn officers with law enforcement responsibility in an incorporated municipality or within the county, and by counting the total population within the incorporated municipalities and within the unincorporated county. So what that boils down to is at the end of October 2021, there was an estimated Carroll County population of 174,675 people. There are currently 245 sworn law officers with 10 sworn personnel currently in training, and there's an additional 16 positions that are funded. Based on a total of 271 funded positions, so that's 245, 10, and then the 16 that are open, the ratio of law enforcement positions to Carroll County population as of the end of October 2021 is 1.55. Based on a total of 255 positions, which is not counting the open positions, just the officers that are currently on duty and those that are in training, the ratio of sworn law office enforcement positions to Carroll County population as of the end of October 2021 was 1.46. Including the development projects in the pipeline, along with the funded positions, the ratio will be over 1.3. Services that are adequate if the projected ratio of sworn law enforcement officers to population is 1.3 to 1,000. So with all of the positions, we're at 1.55. And then not looking at the open positions, we're at 1.46. So still above that 1.3 threshold. So with that, police services are deemed adequate. For schools, I'm not going to get too much in the nitty gritty here. The proposed subdivision is located in the Ebb Valley Elementary, North Carroll Middle, and Manchester Valley High attendance areas. In accordance with the criteria established in Chapter 156, all schools are rated adequate for fiscal years 2022 to 2027. So just to give a brief on the numbers, at the end of 2020, the enrollment projections prepared by CCPS indicate that Ebb Valley had an actual enrollment of 95.4% of state-rated capacity. The projections indicate that enrollment will be at 107.7% in fiscal year 2026. To be deemed adequate, enrollments, the projected enrollment equals or is less than 109% of state-rated capacity. So although at 2026, it's starting to creep up there, it's still well below that threshold of 109%. For North Carroll Middle, again, at the end of December of 2020, their actual enrollment was 82.2% of functional capacity. The projection stated that in fiscal year 2026, it would be 85.7%. So again, well below that 109%. And finally, for Manchester Valley High, their actual enrollment at the end of December 2020 was 95.7%, with the projection in 2026 being 96.8%. So for this subdivision, all schools are deemed adequate. For fire and EMS, the proposed subdivision is located in the Lineborough Fire and EMS districts. The most recent data from the Office of Public Safety reports that for the 2-year period of May 2019 to April 2021, the late and no response statistical data indicates that of the first due total fire calls in the Lineborough district, 0% were categorized as no responses, and 22.22% as late and no responses. Of the first due EMS calls, 1.04% were categorized as no responses, and 1.74% were categorized as late and no responses. So Lineborough is rated adequate for late and no response criteria for fire and EMS. With regard to fire call average time, the same 2-year period, May 2019 to April 2021, Lineborough had an average response time of 9 minutes and 32 seconds. that is deemed approaching inadequate. With regard to EMS, call average response time, they had an average response time of 8 minutes and 14 seconds, again, which is approaching inadequate. Services that are rated adequate, if when utilizing an average over the previous 24 months, response time is less than 8 minutes or is 8 minutes. It is deemed approaching inadequate if, again, within over 24 months, the average time is between 8 minutes and 10 minutes. And again, for fire and EMS, the primary route from the firehouse to the proposed development does not include travel over bridges that cannot adequately support fire and EMS apparatus, which is adequate. And the only road affected by the subdivision was Tracy's Mill Road, and that is deemed adequate. So, as we're doing a combined preliminary and final at the same time, it's a little unorthodox, so I'm going to try to go through this and explain. So for chapter 156, our recommendations, as this is a 2-lot subdivision with no county road improvements, again, preliminary plan and final plans were simultaneously processed and reviewed. I'm going to go through the preliminary first. So with regard to a preliminary plan, the code states, and this is straight from the code, if a public facility or service is inadequate and a relief facility is planned in a 6-year CIP to address the inadequacy or mitigation is accepted by the county pursuant to chapter 156.06B, or a public facility or service is approaching inadequate during the current CIP, the planning commission may conditionally approve the plan to proceed to final plan stage and issue a tentative recordation schedule and tentative building permit reservation subject to modification at the final plan stage. So there's 2 separate parts to that section of code. The first part talks about if it's only inadequate. The second part talks about if it is approaching inadequate. So as this has fire and EMS approaching inadequate, the planning commission can still conditionally approve the plan, the preliminary plan. So with that, pursuant to chapter 156, staff recommends that the planning commission conditionally approve the preliminary plan with conditions as follows. Police, schools, and roads are considered adequate. Fire and EMS are considered approaching inadequate. The building permit reservation is for 2 lots in fiscal year 2022, subject to modification at the final plat stage. The recordation schedule requires the plat to be recorded within 24 months of preliminary approval. And finally, the building permit reservation is allowed to roll over year after year until the sunset provision takes effect and the preliminary plan becomes void. So that's for the approval of the preliminary plan. With regard to the final plan, code states, and again, directly from the code, for projects that received a conditional approval and tentative recordation schedule at the preliminary plan stage, the planning commission shall review the facility or service which was inadequate or approaching inadequate at the preliminary plan stage and may modify the recordation schedule and building permit reservations or place the project in a queue at the discretion of the planning commission. As fire and EMS services are considered approaching inadequate, the planning commission may approve the plan. They can modify the recordation schedule and building permit reservation, or they can decide to place the project within a queue. The code also states that for projects that received a recordation schedule and building permit reservation at the preliminary plan stage, the planning commission secretary shall inform the developer whether any existing or proposed building permit cap would be applicable to this project. There is no existing or proposed building permit cap that would be applicable to this project. So again, with that, pursuant to chapter 156, staff recommends that the planning commission approve the final plan with the following conditions. The building permit reservation is for 2 lots in fiscal year 2022, provided the plat is recorded prior to any permits being issued. The recordation schedule requires the plat to be recorded within 24 months of the preliminary plan approval. And finally, the building permit reservations are allowed to roll over year after year until the sunset provision takes effect and preliminary plan becomes void. So I know that's quite a bit. So if you have any questions or confusions, I mean, I'd be happy to help. And I'm sure Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Hall also be able to answer any questions you guys have.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. Let me just ask, do you gentlemen have anything to add to his presentation?
No, sir. All the process for 2 lots. We're looking forward to getting this done.
Yeah, we get it. Very good. Any questions? Commissioner?
The only question I have is, so we have three, it looks like three motions to make, and do we need to itemize each one of those under that?
I believe it's just two motions.
Oh, it is three.
Oh, what is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's chapter 155,
Mhm.
preliminary and final, chapter 156 preliminary, and then chapter 156 final.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
Gotcha.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
That's what we were.
One final request to the staff, we've prepared and submitted a draft copy of the off-site easement agreement and included the access for the county
Mhm.
facilities. I've had previous ones signed by those owners. Everybody's in agreement. We have no problems. But I would like approval from your staff that the draft is acceptable before I get that signed and notarized again.
Yeah, so you did submit, or I believe CLSI, somebody submitted the draft.
Right, you
And
had
I sent it over to Mr. Ullman, who looked it over and said that he did not find any issues with it.
You're cool with
I'm cool with it.
it? Okay, good deal. All right, I'll get that signed and we'll be ready.
Term of art.
And the motion should be separate.
Separate motions and itemizing each, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, 1, 2, 3, yes.
But
Yay.
I have one question concerning the site plan, if you could go back to.
Of course.
Is there any merit to having one access point for the lots that might be developed in the back and the two lots in the front rather than three? Because we're going to have, two driveways coming out on this road and then also whatever access point that goes to the back. Is there any merit to making those driveways come out to one access point that goes out on this road? This road comes to a T, I believe, at Hanover Pike. I'm not sure it's a full intersection. I think it's a T. So I
Correct.
don't think it's a ton of traffic. I'm just asking, do we care as a county? I mean, what's your thought on that?
So,
I'll let you interject, sir. The access to the first lot, if you're standing on the road looking at the property, access to lot number 4 has been designed as a joint intersection. So it's a double wide driveway at that point, so that the lot using the remaining portion on top of the hill, and if he would, I doubt that'll ever be developed due to the length of the distance off the road. But the double wide intersection there will be shared by both of those parties, the remaining portion, the 10 acres, and lot number 4, so that someone pulling down the hill can stop and someone on Tracy Mill can already get off. So we've already approached that. Good question, but there will only be 2 access points.
yes, I'll follow with that. So lot number 5 is going to have its own apron, its own driveway. Lot number 4, the one that's a little to the north here,
Yes.
they're going to have essentially a double wide apron. So the driveway for 4 will come off of that apron, and then the driveway for the remaining portion will come off of that same apron.
I got it.
The remaining portion, if I remember right, it is able to be subdivided one additional time to have one additional lot. As you can see from all the dots on here, perk testing has become an issue in this area. And so that's why they went with the lots 4 and 5 and put lot 6, maybe on the back burner. Like he said, it might be developed, it might not be developed, but at this time, the remaining portion, if deemed so by the health department, is buildable per our code. So they certainly can put a driveway in and, off of that same apron for lot number 4 and not have any additional access points.
Yeah, concerning your comment on traffic, I live about a mile out the road here on Tracy Mill. For the last 30 years, traffic is pretty light.
All right. Anything else? Do we have any members of the public signed up to speak?
David, if you can minimize this
Of course.
and go to the, yep, keep going. And then go to the bottom here and go to keep going to the right, the go-to meeting,
Oh,
the
yes.
little orange circle right there. So are they gone now, Matt? Okay, all right, so no, now we don't. All right.
Okay. Very good.
That was probably Mr. Rob Hutter, who was the potential, very much interested in the remaining portion. And I advised him that he could zoom in today and watch if he wished.
Okay.
Okay, so no, we do not have any members of the public on the line.
All right. Well, very good. If there's no further discussion, then I'd be happy to have someone try to formulate these three motions.
I will try. So pursuant to chapter 155, Planning Commission recommends approval of the preliminary and final plan subject to the following conditions. One, that
Let me stop you, Jen. Do we need to read them or can we just reference the 6 conditions listed?
Yeah, you can reference the conditions
I asked
into
that.
the.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
So you're moving, I'm sorry.
No, that,
That's-
moving that the following, the 6 conditions on page 3 of the staff report
Very good.
be met.
And is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve pursuant to chapter 155, the preliminary and final plan, subject to the 6 conditions listed in the staff report. Is there
Yes.
any further discussion? All right, do we need a roll call or can we do a voice? vote?
Let's do voice votes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstaining? Very good. Unanimously approved. All right, Janice, do you want to give it a try for the next?
Sure. Pursuant to chapter 156, the planning commission recommends that we conditionally approve the preliminary plan with the following conditions that are listed on page 5 of the staff report.
And there are 4 conditions you're referring to in your motion?
Yes, for
Very good. Is there a second to Ms. Kirkner's motion?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion, and a second, that pursuant to chapter 156, planning commission conditionally approves the preliminary plan with 4 conditions listed in the staff report at page 5. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Very good, unanimously approved. Janice?
okay, I'm gonna try one last time to get it totally right. Pursuant to chapter 156, the planning commission recommends that the plat for Tracy Mill, what is it? Bachman Overlook is approval, the final plan with the conditions set forth, the 3 conditions set forth in page 5 of the staff report.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second? Very good. Well, so we have a motion, a second, pursuant to chapter 156. Planning Commission approved the final plan with the 3 conditions listed on page 5 of the staff report. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? It is approved unanimously. Well, good luck.
Thank you, sir. Been a long road.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a recess. The favorite part of the day. We'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll be back a couple minutes after 11.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't ask for a countdown, but hopefully they can hang with us and get us going. So we'll move on to item 12, which is a final site plan. Case number S as in Sam, 20-0034, Eldersburg Crossing, third amended. And good morning. Good morning.
Good morning again. It's Kirsten Egerl, Development Review again, and once more, we are in the Eldersburg area. In fact, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump from Covey Wolf subdivision we were previously discussing. Further to the west up Route 26. So again, we're in Eldersburg. We're located at the intersection of Route 26 and Route 32, Sykesville Road and Liberty Road, at what I refer to as the old Walmart site, which is technically Eldersburg Crossing. This is a third amended site plan for Eldersburg Crossing. Not only is this area familiar from our last project in this meeting, but also from the September Planning Commission meeting in general. We discussed this very same project during the September 2021 Planning Commission meeting for concept. Now we are back for final approval of the site plan. So if you recall, and if you were not here for that meeting, what is being proposed here is essentially a small addition to the existing old Walmart building. What is being proposed here is an addition on the western side of the old Walmart building, where Walmart used to have a garden center. There's a small, very small existing structure there, a part of the building that's currently not utilized, as well as an existing concrete pad that is also essentially not utilized. So what the developer proposes to do, which I will allow them to introduce themselves here in a minute, I apologize, I'm very excited to get this one wrapped up. The developer proposes to do is essentially put an addition onto this building to allow for a more spacious tenant site for a new tenant. So if I could, on that note, if I could have the developer and the engineer introduce themselves, please.
Jeff Ziegler with CLSI. And Dave Sullivan with Quantum Companies.
Thank you. Okay, so again, this is the Eldersburg Crossing Planned Business or Planned Commercial Center. This is just going to be a new tenant essentially within that existing planned commercial center. It's going to add a slightly larger addition to the existing structure, which is currently 2,300 square feet in size and is proposed after the addition to be 5,800 square feet in size. As you can see and tell from our discussions here, it's a pretty minor addition, pretty minor changes to the plans. There's already an existing concrete slab there. They're just tacking on a building on top. So with that being the case, their technical reviews were pretty minor. They're adding 15 new parking spaces. Parking is still adequate, as we previously went over from September's meeting. This site as a whole has a multiplier variance for parking applied to it. They went through a zoning case a few years ago for that, so the parking based on that is adequate. They provide additional parking than what is the minimum requirement there. Everything here is public water and sewer. The health department's approved it. Utilities has approved it. Stormwater management is already accommodated by existing structures on site, so there was no additional need for any stormwater management features, and stormwater management approval has been granted. A zoning as well is acceptable and has been approved this project as well. There's no floodplain requirements, soil conservation or forest conservation for this project here. Landscaping, this is a funny thing for landscaping. I'm sorry, we're gonna move to the plan. I apologize if you have a hard time seeing that. So here's the addition I've been blabbing on about. Funny thing for landscaping. Landscaping screening is required. They're proposing a new trash enclosure here on an existing parking area. And landscaping screening is required. That screening can be met in a variety of manners. In this case, it's a vinyl fence. And we are getting a landscaping bond for the vinyl fence. So that will be taken care of, and that satisfies the requirements for landscaping. Again, parking is acceptable. Additional markings for, on the left-hand side on this plan, you can just barely see it, a new ADA compliant parking space, as well as a crosswalk markings across the street to get to the front door of the new addition, the new tenant site. And that satisfies permits, ADA compliance requirements. And with this site, now we're moving a little bit further off-site. At this site, there's 2 entrances existing, 3 technically. 2 come off of, one comes off of down here on Liberty Road. There's a second entrance technically you could get to from Liberty Road, correct, through this throughway, an easement over an adjacent property. And then there's another one that comes off the county road here, which is Brevard. So this is a Google Earth image here. All those entrances are existing. County engineering review is fine with it. Roads is fine with it. State highway is fine with it. But I wanted to bring our attention to this location because this was a point of discussion for most of our discussion last couple months ago, September's meeting, was the sidewalks in this area. So again, we're kind of coming off of the structure that's being proposed. The parking's adequate. We're gonna have a new trash structure there with a fence. Now we're looking at the side along the county public road for sidewalks. So the plans that came in last time showed sidewalks on the westernmost location of the property, connecting Route 32 sidewalk to essentially the site, which would also allow for connectivity across the street to the grocery store and the sidewalks for that development there, which has also interconnectivity throughout the area and the other stores in this region. However, what was not on the previous plan was sidewalk that continued from that point to the east to connect to adjacent property. Now that adjacent property is this site plan, Liberty Station. I believe that's actually Eldersburg Station. I apologize for that typo. Eldersburg Station, and in fact, we heard earlier today that site plan was previously approved and has received an extension. So this is a site plan that's already been approved. The site plan, if you were to look closely, you can see there's sidewalks throughout the site plan, but in particular, related to our discussion, there's sidewalk here. This is the old Walmart site. This is the site that we're looking at now. So the Eldersburg Station shows sidewalk throughout, as in particular connecting to our site. And the previous site plan did not show sidewalk in that location. The new site plan does. The new site plan does show sidewalk along the entire frontage of Brevard. There's a note, and for anybody watching at home, I'm sure there's no way you can read that. So I'm going to read that here. It says, "The sidewalk shown and noted as future phase will be installed at such time as Eldersburg Station is under construction." So that's to say that the sidewalk that's noted here as that future phase will be installed, but it will be installed at the time that the Eldersburg Station is built. We discussed this at length in the last meeting, that this sidewalk to the north or to the west provides connectivity for the existing structures and to the existing shopping centers, and that this sidewalk here is what we talked about earlier, a sidewalk to nowhere until that Eldersburg Station is constructed. So in order to make sure that sidewalk is constructed and provides that connectivity, we kind of have a middle ground there where when that site is constructed in the future, this connection will be made. And on that note too, before we get too far from that, the way the county will ensure that will be by bonding the sidewalk as a whole. So in the future, when that point comes, if that construction doesn't occur, that construction can still occur if push comes to shove there. But I think we discussed this previously, and once that's there, it makes sense, and it would be to the benefit of everybody to have that sidewalk. So that's really the biggest change on these plans. It's a pretty simple site plan here. I'll bring you down to the next page here with our beautiful photographs. And again, this is about that sidewalk. So here's the building off in the distance here. I think we'll see it in the next page too, where the addition will occur. This location here, I believe, is the same place I was standing taking all of these photographs. So this is looking to the Eldersburg Station site. So this is where the future sidewalk will be, right against the road. and this is looking to Route 32, so this is where the current sidewalk will end. So when this current site plan is constructed, the sidewalk will come to this point. They'll be allowing for crossing across the street as well as into the site itself. And here are the elevations of the proposed structure. Like I said, there's already an existing structure there. If you were to drive by or possibly on the next sheet, look at it, and it's about from here to there. We have an existing building, and they're just tacking on additional space here. It should be pretty similar in style to the mixed styles of the existing tenants here. So it should fit right in. If you just imagine this a little bit wider, we're going to be looking at that when this is all said and done. So, in regard to the site plan itself, for Chapter 155, an action would be required for approval of the final site plan with the conditions of the Public Works Agreement, including that bonding for the sidewalk, and of course, if any changes happen to the site plan in the future, that the plan come back for further review.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler or Mr. Sullivan, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I don't.
Questions here from the commission?
I assume parking's adequate?
Yes, as I mentioned previously, there is a zoning administrator case that happened a few years ago to modify the multiplier for parking requirements for the whole site. So that's applicable here too, and per those requirements, parking is adequate, and in fact, I think we have 3 extra parking spaces and is required. Yes, parking is adequate.
Very good. Do we have any members of the public that have signed up for this?
No, we have no members of the public.
All right. And before we have a motion, I just want to thank the developer for accommodating this. From our standpoint, I think it was a safety issue. It wasn't just a convenience issue, although it's that. But more than that, it's a longer-term safety issue. So while this was a minor change to the property, I know the sidewalk's expensive, and we very much appreciate your attention to that.
Absolutely. Appreciate the compromise as well.
You're welcome. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move we approve the site plan, subject to the 2 conditions listed on page 3 of 3, drafted by Kirsten, dated December 14th, 2021.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the site plan, subject to the 2 conditions set forth in the staff report. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstaining? Very good. Set to
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
We'll move on to item 13, case number S 20-0026, Buttercup Road LLC property.
I thought he was just sticking around because he wanted.
What's that?
What's the show?
So I know that, David, you're doing the presentation again. I mean, we're seeing you again for a different presentation. And while you're getting set up, do you mind if I ask the gentleman to introduce himself?
Please, free.
Sure, I'm Doug Nave, owner of the Buttercup property, running CEO of Near Communications.
And last name is Nave?
Nave, N-A-V-E, yes, sir.
N-A-V-E. Thank you.
Dover Hankins, I work with Doug, I'm the developer's representative.
Marty Hackett, CLSI.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, David, if you're ready to go.
All right, thank you for that. So David Beecraft, Bureau Development Review. As already stated, the last project we'll be talking about today is the Buttercup Road LLC property, file number S-20-0026. Now that you're all familiar with the engineer and developer, essentially what this project is proposing is a warehouse on the corner of Buttercup Road and Raincliff Road. This is before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a final site plan, so we will be looking for consideration and approval. This may look very familiar. It was actually before the Planning and Zoning Commission in August, so 4 months ago.
I think we remember it.
Yeah. But just in case you don't,
Right.
this is again in Eldersburg. This is right on the edge of the municipal limits of Sykesville, and it's outlined here in blue. Here is Buttercup Road, here's Raincliff Road, and then here's Sykesville Road, which is Maryland Road 32. So again, the property itself is roughly 11 3/4 acres and hosts a multi-tenant building that currently exists here, and this is being used for, I believe it's for commercial offices at the current time. The use of the existing building was previously reviewed by the county in a previous site plan that was approved back in 1982. The property lies in the I2 zoning district, which is heavy industrial, and has existing access onto Buttercup Road, right here, as well as Raincliff Road, which is about right here. Both of those being county maintained roadways. The adjoining property to the north and the east of the subject property is owned by the state of Maryland and is also zoned I2 as well as agriculture, so it has a split zone on it. The southern adjoining property is zoned conservation and is currently Freedom Park. And finally, the property to the west is zoned R7500, which is residential 7500. It hosts a townhouse condominium community, as you see from the aerial, and it lies within the municipal limits of Sykesville. So that's what this red line is here. This is the municipal limits of Sykesville. And so this property is literally right on the outside of that limit. All adjoining properties are served by public water and sewer, excluding the park. So the park is not on public water and sewer. The existing multi-tenant building is located within the northeastern portion of the site, as you see on the aerial here. And there is an existing monument sign right along Buttercup Road. The remaining area of the site is currently used for either product storage, parking, or is undeveloped and is wooded. There is an existing stream on site, but there is no FEMA 100-year floodplain designation. So design-wise, not much has really changed since last seen in August. The developer is still proposing to add a just shy of 70,000 square foot single-story warehouse onto the southern portion of the property, and that's shown here. The existing building and associated parking area will remain on site. So they're not going to demolish this at all. It's going to remain on site. The proposed warehouse will utilize the existing access from Buttercup Road, and they are looking to remove the access from Raincliff Road. A concrete sidewalk is proposed along Buttercup Road that will extend to the extent of the property boundary and will run down and will transition into a 10-foot wide paved pathway along Raincliff Road. And that will connect to the existing sidewalk that's in front of the condominium. And they are also proposing a crosswalk from the intersection here to Freedom Park. So a little bit easier access for those that are using the sidewalk and the pathway to get to the Freedom Park. As a portion of the proposed pathway lies on the subject property, the county will receive a roughly 5-foot wide pedestrian easement, so that way we can continue to maintain that pathway. The building mounted and pole lights are proposed around the new warehouse, both having a mounting height of roughly 20 feet tall. There is a photometric plan that's been included in your plan set. There are no additional freestanding signs that are proposed with this, so there will be utilizing that existing sign right up here at Buttercup. So the proposed use will have roughly 50 employees and will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The parking requirements for a warehouse, as outlined in the code, is 1 for every 1.5 employees on the maximum shift, or 1 for every 1,500 square feet of floor area, whichever is greater. After calculating both of those, it resulted in requiring 46 parking spaces, and I believe that was based on the employees. The plan currently shows 53 parking spaces, so they're well above that threshold. Along with this this site plan, a subdivision plan is also going through the process as a minor subdivision. The developer is proposing to break off a piece of property up here that will house the existing building and existing parking for that building, and then have the rest of the area of the site be its own lot. That is currently going through the process. I believe they have maybe one or two review agencies left prior to recording that plat. Since it'll be one access for both sites, we will look for an access easement so that both lots have legal access to their respective areas. So the concept site plan was initially submitted on February 16th earlier this year. The plan was subject to citizen involvement at the March 2021 Technical Review Committee meeting. There was one citizen in attendance who provided an email prior to the meeting, and they were inquiring about a potential sidewalk connection from the condominiums to the park. With that 10-foot wide pathway, I believe that has been met, with a crosswalk as well. There was another email that was received prior to the meeting. Again, this was earlier this year, and requested a copy of the plans, but they themselves did not provide any comments or opposition to what was proposed. On August 17th, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission was presented the concept site plan. The minutes have been included into your packets. The commission elected to review the final site plan. One of the biggest things that was discussed at that previous meeting was landscape and the screen concerns, from the condominium, from the roadways. So with that, I'll go to the landscape plan here. So there is landscape proposed along Buttercup Road, along Raincliff Road, and then also along this portion here that abuts that condominium. And there is also, some trees, proposed throughout the site here. And also provided by the developer engineer is this sketch as well. So it was mentioned that so at the previous meeting, it was mentioned the landscape may not be as necessary as thought by the planning commission due to the contours of the land. So this will aid in that argument that the contours of the land have the headlights going towards the top of the houses here. So this is a general tractor trailer. You can see this line for the headlights that runs through, and this is essentially where it runs through too. So these squares here would be the top of the townhouses themselves. So this was provided just to kind of help show the commission, I guess to help aid in the concerns that were brought up previously. And I'll go back one slide. So this is the elevations of the proposed warehouse. I believe there's been no changes to this since the previous plan. Okay, and so I'll just go through these pictures of the site itself. So these are just throughout the site. You can see the existing townhouses over here. And then again, existing townhouses on the edge here. And these are just pictures throughout the site of how it was. Again, it went to Planning Commission back in August, so these pictures are fairly recent. This is the existing entranceway. This is the existing building, the existing sign, and this is the stream that's on site that runs towards that condominium complex. This is one of the two entrances. So this is the one at Buttercup Road. This is the one that will remain and will be utilized with this site plan. And this is the entrance at Raincliff Road. This is the one that will be removed with this site plan. And these are some shots of where the proposed path and sidewalk will reside next to the roadway here. And I believe that's the last one. It is. Okay, perfect. So with that, the final plan has received approval by the Carroll County Health Department and the Bureau of Utilities with public water and sewer connections. The plan has received final approval from Water Resources and Floodplain Management, with easements being required for both. Landscape and Forest Conservation have granted final approval with bonding being required for both of those. Engineering Review and State Highway Administration have both approved the plan with existing access. Stormwater Management has granted final approval. Stormwater management requirements will be addressed via multiple microbiome facilities throughout the site. So if I go back to the site plan here, there's, microbiome facilities behind the warehouse here. There's some on the opposite side of the parking area here. And I believe there's some up here as well. So throughout the site, they're looking to collect water everywhere. And in accordance with a site development plan memorandum from the Department of Planning, the proposal is consistent with the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan, and the land use designation is consistent with the Sykesville 2030 Comprehensive Plan land use designation of general industrial. So with that, pursuant to Chapter 155, staff recommends approval of the site development plan subject to the following conditions, and I'm just going to read through these. That the developer enters into a public works agreement with Carroll County that guarantees completion of the improvements, that a plat of subdivision be recorded simultaneously with or prior to the public works agreement. I will mention that the subdivision plat was included in your plan packets. This approval does not include approval of that subdivision, but I wanted to include that in your plan packet so you can see how everything would lay. The third condition is that a stormwater management easement and maintenance agreement be granted to the county commissioners, that a forested water resource protection easement be granted to the county commissioners, that a landscape maintenance agreement be recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement, that a floodplain easement be granted to the county commissioners, that a drainage and utility easement be granted to the county commissioners, that a pedestrian easement be granted to the county commissioners, and finally, that any changes to this plan will require an amended site plan to be approved by the county, Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have, as well as the gentleman next to me here.
Thank you, David. Do you all have anything to add?
David, do you mind going back to that elevation view? Just, that was the biggest item that we were talking about at the last meeting. What's happening is we went and actually placed this to scale. So this is a 2-scale version. The elevations of the townhomes that are adjacent to the property, they are over 400 feet away. But their elevations are set based on true elevations. So you can see we're about 30 feet higher in elevation. Grant, in the wintertime when the trees are off, the leaves are off the trees, you don't have as much screening as you do in the springtime, summer, and fall. We're gonna be planting more trees to assist with that. The headlights, obviously, we show a projection going straight out. Well, headlights actually go down unless you have high beams on, that kind of thing. So the direction of the beams are actually gonna probably hit the ground before they go off-site. That's what we believe. The big thing is that talking with Mr. Nave, very rarely is there any truck traffic during the evening. It's all done during the day. They have 24-hour shifts, but that's more warehouse work, that's not delivery work. That normally occurs. I'm not saying it's never gonna happen, but it's minimal. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but.
You're absolutely right. It also depends on the time. If, sometimes it gets dark at 5:30, so you might have a truck. But during the summertime, when it gets dark at 8:30, you won't see any trucks at night.
So we believe we demonstrated, after we looked into it, some detail and feel comfortable that we don't see it being as much of an issue as what people were believing. And, so as the trees mature that we're planting, that's gonna catch some of your lower growth, but obviously it takes, a couple years to get that started and the screening to happen. Because the elevation differential is 30 feet. Now, we did bring some of the trees up closer to the parking lot, so some of that elevation is made up we're planting them up the hill versus down the hill. But we're doing them in both locations, so ultimately there should be pretty sufficient screening going on. And we're here to answer any questions. Mr. Nave's looking forward to bringing his company to Carroll County, and this is a great location for him.
Yeah. We're looking forward to having it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions?
The lighting, is it gonna be wall mounted in the dock area, or is it gonna be pole lighting? We mentioned poles earlier. Is it gonna be pole
Yeah, I think
casting towards the building, or is it gonna be wall mounted?
It's gonna be poles, and the reason why is for safety. We're gonna have video surveillance. We wanna make sure nobody's walking around in there or doing anything. They will be on timers, so if nobody walks by there, I don't wanna burn the electricity, it'll shut the light off. But if the sensor comes on, that light will shine so that we can get a picture with our cameras.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have anybody signed up to comment?
David, can you just minimize this and get back to that Cisco? I don't believe we do, but we'll double check.
There's nobody on there
Yep.
right now.
All right, nope,
Okay.
so no public.
All right, well, very good. Well, and before we have entertain a motion, I just wanted to thank you, Nate, for accommodating these things and being a good neighbor. You're next to a community, putting in the sidewalk, the crosswalk, all of those things that we recognize that increases expense. But from a public safety standpoint and from a good neighbor standpoint, it means a lot to the community. And we really appreciate your receptiveness to that and addressing the landscaping, so thank you. With that, the Chair would be happy to entertain a motion.
You go right ahead.
I move we approve the site plan as recommended, with the conditions listed on page 3 of 3, prepared by David B. Kraft, and on December 14th, 2021.
Very good. Do you have a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the site development plan, subject to the 9 conditions listed in the staff report. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Unanimously approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck. All right, the only item we have left is item 14, which is general public comment.
And I don't believe, Matt, can you just confirm one more time? There's no one on the line for general public comment either?
Confirmed.
Yep, okay.
All right, very good. Then with that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion that we adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We will stand adjourned. Thank you
So
all.
we will see you 100% virtually on Wednesday, January 5th for our work session.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
We're adjourned. Thank you.